So a couple other things I wanted to add in thinking about attachment. What we know is that the right hemisphere of the brain, it grows most, it is in the strongest kind of developmental period up to 18 months. The left hemisphere is not developing as quickly as the right hemisphere during that time. Then at about 18 months, it starts to shift a little bit. At 3 years, the left hemisphere kind of takes over as the part of the brain that is developing more quickly. So what we know about the right hemisphere, if you remember back in our provider course when we were talking about responsive parenting and dyadic attunement, we were talking about how attunement is right brain to right brain. So it's not about the content of our words. It's a body-based, it's something we feel inside. It's our tone of voice. Our right brain gathers information and holds consciousness in a different way than the left side of our brain. The right hemisphere of the brain holds images, sounds, pictures, I guess that's images, feelings, body sensations. If you read that book by Jill Taylor Bolte, it's a brilliant book that really gives you information on that one. But it's the left hemisphere that kind of puts things together into a narrative and uses words, things like that. It's more linear, etc. So most of our attachment patterns are developed during these first 18 months because that right hemisphere is like running the show, and it's that right hemisphere to right hemisphere, caregiver to child, that is downloading those attachment patterns. And in Provider Course 3, we'll talk more about what are the different attachment patterns that you see in your groups and how can we support people. But so the reason why I wanted to mention this is that when we are working in our most deeply primitive circuitry, that survival circuitry that's most likely located, more in the brainstem area, honestly, for many of us, almost becomes like a reflex. I think of, when you first learned not to put your hand on a hot stove, like you put your hand on a hot stove when you're very little, and you learn quickly to pull that hand away. And it becomes like a muscle memory, You don't need to learn that usually more than once if you've got kind of your average brain. And your body knows instantaneously. No longer do you have to think at all about it. It's that subcortical override. And oftentimes, unfortunately, our survival circuits are like this. I mean, fortunately, because it keeps us alive, but it helps us jam our foot on the brake when we need to, or grab the kid when we need to. But it doesn't help us when it comes to a survival circuit, like I get my safety from sugar. Or I just was working with a person the other day, what was hers? I get my safety from pushing others away. It was very painful for her, but it was like, instantaneous, almost like a reflex survival circuit. But the reason why I bring this up is because these circuits are encoded at such an early age and so much in a primitive part of our brain that the cycle tool isn't enough to get to them. And I think that's what we learned, that's what Laura learned, and has created this more wonderful, survival circuit work. And our travel backs is such an important tool for helping us get to some of that right brain information. And I wanted to mention this because in the travel backs, we guide people just to stay in their body and just to feel their feelings and their body sensations and maybe any images that come up, and try to stay with that information. Why? We're letting the left hemisphere just kind of go a little bit offline, and we're activating that right hemisphere information, where that circuit is located, where that circuit is wired, and staying with that. And the idea is that we're having now, for those of you who are mental health professionals, you know the corrective emotional experience. This is what we're giving participants in a travel back. Corrective emotional experience. We're staying with them. We're staying connected in attunement with them. That means secure attachment. While they plummet into their disconnection, into their terror, into their panic, into whatever those awful feelings were that were too big to tolerate when they were little, and so they foreclosed on them and they shut down, and it's that not being able to feel those feelings to help bring them back to homeostasis that becomes problematic. So we're holding them there, and they can re-experience those body sensations, re-experience those feelings, keep breathing through it, being held by us. And each and every time they do that, the brain can get a bit more adaptive. It doesn't have to cling to the survival circuit. Maybe it's safe to feel these feelings. Maybe those more homeostatic circuits, I am okay. I am not bad. I do exist. Whatever it is they might be working on. And of course, we don't articulate that at this time. We don't want to activate the left hemisphere. We're just holding them there. And that's why I hope... sometimes people get frustrated, but there's not a lot we want to do in that stage 1 survival circuit work, because we're letting the emotional brain do the healing. We're letting the right emotional social processing happens in the right hemisphere of the brain. It's not something we think about and talk about. And that's why regular therapy, oops, I don't mean to diss, but I know I feel always like I'm getting less powerful results with regular talk therapy, because that's, left hemisphere dominant. So we, in a sense, Alan Shore calls it, right brain to right brain therapy, and this is what EBT is really. It's a attunement-based right brain to right brain. Right brain to right brain therapy. And honestly, for those of us working in attachment or having knowledge of the neuroscience, this is the only kind of therapy that I think that's transformative, and there's, and powerful and well worth our effort, I believe. Okay, I'm gonna, one more video after this.